Okay, so every Friday we do our cold reads, and it's usually going to be some type of social studies passage. And as we start getting into our social studies units, they're going to align more and more with what we're talking about in class. But today I thought that this was a fun one about some ancient history that I always find really interesting. And so we read Lost Treasure, and here you can see pictures of the Spanish conquistadors sailing in to where the Aztecs lived. And we got to learn some really cool history today. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and I'm going to show you the answers to each question and why those are the correct answers. So today you had 3 open response questions and then you had 3 multiple choice questions. And so on open responses, and I said this in the instruction video, I like you to write in complete sentences, okay? So here's the first question. What were some achievements of the Aztecs? Well, and remember, we've kind of been talking about rap, okay? I can restate that before I even go look for the answer. I could say some achievements of the Aztecs were. And then I'm going to go back in my passage because that's what good readers do. We go back in our passage to find answers to questions. So I know when it has this heading right here called a great empire. Headings, kiddos, kind of give me a clue about what the rest of the paragraph is going to be about. And when this heading says a great empire, it's going to tell me about how the Aztecs were really great, right? So in here, it told me the Aztecs built temples and palaces, developed advanced methods of farming, and created writing system using symbols. So those are some pretty good achievements, okay? So I used my heading, A Great Empire, to help narrow down where I needed to look. And I found where it talked about how they had some really advanced methods. They had done some really good or cool things. So the Aztecs they had advanced methods of farming, created a writing system using symbols, and children went to school. Or even if you had talked about them building temples and palaces, anything like that, anything from this little section right here, that would be a great thing to add, okay? All right, cool beans. Let's go to question 2. How did the relationship between Montezuma II and Hernan Cortez change? Okay, when I hear this key word, well, there we go. Oh no, I can't write all over there. That's okay. When I hear this keyword, change, it tells me that at one point in time, their relationship was good or bad. Then later, their relationship changed. So it's asking me about 2 different things at the beginning and at the end. So when I hear that word change, I need to look for how it was in the beginning, and then I need to look for how it was in the end. Okay, so let's go in and look. Right up here, this is kind of a good introduction, right? Okay, it tells me about the sad night. Okay, then right here, I hear about the great empire. Here is where I start learning about the surprise visitors. Do you see how I am using these things in red? We call them headings. I am using them to help me figure out where to look for answers. So I know that Hernan Cortez, I remember because I've already read the article, right, kiddos? I always read my article first, okay? After I've read my article, I remember who Hernan Cortez is, and I go back and I'm like, this is where he started. This is where he came. This is where Montezuma II first met him, okay? So it says in 1519, the Aztec Empire was at the peak of its power. That year, conquistadors or conquerors from Spain arrived. They were led by Hernan Cortez. Okay, I know I'm in the right spot because look, that's the guy I'm trying to talk about right there. Montezuma II was uncertain about the visitors, but he invited them to stay in his palace. The Spaniards weren't very good guests forever. For one thing, they began stealing Aztec jewelry. They had metalworkers melt down a lot of jewelry and form it into gold bars, Smith explains. Soon, the Spanish soldiers took Montezuma II prisoner, and historians aren't sure exactly who killed him on June 30th, 1950, but 1520, But they agree that his death was the beginning of the end of the Aztec Empire. After fleeing, I cannot say this word, so we call it T, okay? After fleeing T that night, Cortez and his army returned about a year later. They conquered the Aztecs and set up a new colony. Okay, so I refreshed my memory. How did the relationship between Montezuma II and Hernan Cortez change? Okay, it changed because in the beginning, what did Montezuma II do in the beginning? Right here. He was uncertain about the visitors. We're going to underline that. He was uncertain about the visitors, but he invited them to stay in his palace. So in the beginning, Montezuma II invited them to stay, and Hernan was his guest. Okay, so it kind of started out good, right? They had a good relationship. So we say it was a good relationship. But what happens? Okay, right here, we learn that they weren't very good guests. They started stealing their jewelry. They took him prisoner and they killed him. So, pretty bad, right? Okay. So, what could we say? It was a good relationship. By the end, Cortez was stealing from Montezuma, kidnapped him, and killed him. Now, we don't know if Hernan Cortez did it, but we know that it resulted in Hernan Cortez being there resulted in Montezuma II being killed, right? So their relationship turned bad. That's putting it lightly, okay? This guy ended up dead, okay? Yes, it turned bad. So do you see how I had to talk about how the relationship was in the beginning and how the relationship was in the end? Because when I hear that keyword in a question that says change, it tells me I'm going to have to talk about two things: how it was in the beginning, how it was in the end. Y'all are rock stars. Stay with me, okay? Let me erase our highlights so we can move on, because when I'm scroll on the page, it's going to mess up my lines. Okay. Number 3. What is the section A Golden Clue mostly about? Okay, lots of good things to talk about here. So when it says a section, A Golden Clue, that means I'm going to find the name, A Golden Clue, in red, okay? Well, okay. What is the section A Golden Empire mostly about? Okay, so lots of good things for us to talk about here. Good keywords here. When I hear this right here, A Golden Empire, what is this section A Golden Empire? What it means, kiddos, is that I need to go find that in my passage. Look, it's right here in red, A Golden Empire. Okay, we call these section titles, okay, or headers, okay? So right here is where I'm going to be reading. But the other keyword I want you to notice is this keyword right here that says mostly about. When a question asks me, what is it mostly about? It's asking me about the main idea. What is the main idea of this passage? Okay, main idea is what it's mostly about. It's the big picture. And if you think back, you learned about main idea in 3rd grade. We will talk about it a lot in 4th grade. We just haven't gotten there yet, and that's okay. Okay, this is kind of why we do this every Friday, to kind of start refreshing our memories and learning new things along the way. Main idea is what the passage is mostly about. I can look at the first, second, and last sentence to help me, and I'm going to ask myself, who or what was this paragraph or these couple of paragraphs talking all about? Who or what was it mostly about? So here we go. I'm going to read through, and then I'm going to use those strategies to help me. In 1981, a construction worker was digging at the site of a new bank in Mexico City. He pulled something unexpected from the mud. It was a gold bar that weighed about 4 pounds. Archaeologists studied the bar, but questions remained. Now, nearly 40 years later, experts have confirmed that it is stolen Aztec treasure dropped by the fleeing conquistadors. Guys, that happened in 1520. Okay, so we're talking 450, 60 years later, they found this gold. That's a big deal. Okay. The bar was found in the area where Cortez and his soldiers escaped. Experts analyzed the gold with a special type of x ray machine and matched it with all other gold Aztec artifacts from that time period. Smith says that the gold bar is the first direct evidence of the events of La Noche Triste. It's connection. It's a connection to one of the greatest ancient civilizations. Awesome. Okay, mostly about who or what? Well, it was mostly about that golden bar that they found while they were digging, right? And it was talking about how they know now that it's Aztec gold. Okay, so I'm going to look back at my first, second, and last sentence to kind of help me too. In 1981, a construction worker was digging at the side of a new bank in Mexico City. He pulled something unexpected from the mud. I'm going to kind of read this last little sentence because it's just right here. It was a gold bar that weighed about 40 pounds. My last sentence says it's a connection to one of the great ancient civilizations. So, sorry, my dog really wants to play fetch. So, when I talk about what this passage is mostly about, the who or the what, I know that this section was mostly about, see how I'm using words from my question in my answer? Was mostly about the gold bar that a construction worker found that links today to the Aztec treasure. Now, yours is not going to sound like mine, and that's fine. Okay, that is fine. But it just needs to kind of sum up what we heard. Okay, kiddos, that's the hardest part. Those open responses are the hardest part. So we are ready for the quick, fun, or multiple choice. Okay, number 4. Which statement is true about the Aztecs and the Spaniards? Okay, freeze. Keywords in this question. Which statement is true about the Aztecs and the Spaniards? That means 3 of these statements are not true. 3 of these statements are false, and we are looking for the one that is true. So a way that I like to help do this is I like to go through, and if I'm like, nope, that's not correct, I can exit out, I can eliminate it, okay? We like to say eliminate, okay? I love doing that. We'll talk about our testing strategy later on in the year, but we love to say eliminate, okay? So if I think, nope, that never happened in the passage, I'm going to eliminate it from my choices, okay? The Aztecs caused a war by not welcoming the Spaniards. Go back in your passage and check. I know where it says surprise visitors. It says right here, he invited them to stay in his palace. So what can we do with that one? We can eliminate, okay? It is not A. They lived peacefully together for many years. Okay, well, right here it says they weren't very good guests. Okay, so, and look, they killed him in 1520, but they got there in 1519, so they're only there for 1 year. So did they live as peaceful guests for many years? No. Eliminate. Okay. They created a new civilization together. Okay, well, let's go up here to where it talks about a great empire. Remember, this is where they talked about the civilization. It says that they built a powerful civilization that thrived for 200 years. They built it by themselves, just the Aztecs. This was before the Spaniards got here, right? Right here, they're talking about how they built it. And then down here, this is where the Spaniards arrived. So no, the Spaniards did not help them build the civilization. So what can we do? Eliminate, okay? Last one, and look at this. We've eliminated these 3, so I know that this is the last one I have, but we still want to check our work. The Spaniards took advantage of the Aztecs. Well, what do we have right here? They began stealing Aztec jewelry. I mean, that's taking advantage of them, right? So the best choice here is D, the Spaniards took advantage. Very good. All right, number 5. We are almost done, kiddos. Stay with me. Let's get these lines erased. Dogs. I'm so sorry, guys. if I put them out in the hallway, they're just going to whine. And so it's better to have them in here, but they get a little wound up sometimes. All right, so this said part A, which quit. This says part A, which tells me that I'm going to have a part B. And so when it says which detail best supports the answer to question 1, what it's asking is, I chose that the Spaniards took advantage of the Aztecs. Which sentence from the passage proves that this is the right answer? In 1519, the Aztec Empire was at the peak of its power. Well, does that prove that the Spaniards took advantage of them? Does this say anything at all about the Spaniards? No. That year, conquistadors or conquerors from Spain arrived. Well, it does talk about the Spaniards, but does it talk about how they took advantage of them? For one thing, the Spaniards began stealing Aztec jewelry. Oh my goodness, isn't that what we had highlighted? Yes. Okay, I'm going to click it to hold my spot, but I never just click and move on. I still have one more I need to check. Good readers always look at all the options. They conquered the Aztecs and set up a new colony. Well, yeah, that's true. That happened. But does that prove that the Spaniards took advantage of the Aztecs? Kinda. But which one is the best answer? When you get down to 2 kiddos, 2 that you're like, I just can't decide, you've got to choose the one that makes the most sense. What is the best answer? What is the best answer? And that is going to be C. All right, last one. This one was probably really hard for you. This is new learning. We haven't covered this in class yet. So if you struggle with this one, it's okay. It's actually not going to count against you. It was kind of like a bonus, okay? So, which choice best describes the structure of the article? Now, when we say structure, what we mean is how did the author organize what he wrote? There are 5 different structures, and we're going to talk about all of them soon. But we have compare and contrast, cause and effect, sequence, problem, and solution. When we compare and contrast something, the author is going to give you 2 different topics, and he's going to tell you how they are the same or how they are different. When the author talks about cause and effect, he's going to talk about how in the beginning this thing happened, and then as a result, it made this other thing happen. When we talk about sequence, the author is putting a story in order. Okay, so usually this is going to be history or something like that. And so you're going to see lots of dates. You're going to see this happen first, next, last. Problem and solution. In the beginning, the author's going to give you a problem. At the end, the author's going to tell you how to solve that problem. So just by me saying that, which one sounds like it fits here? It's sequence. And let me show you why. It starts off with an introduction, okay? But here we start at the Great Empire. We talk about how in the 13th century, okay, they were building this great empire. It lasted 200 years. But then in 1519, the Spaniards came. And then in 1520, the civilization fell because Montezuma II was killed. And then 461 years later, in 1981, they found some gold left over from that civilization. So do you see how it starts way back here in the 13th century to 1519 to 1520 to 1981? Okay, it put events in order. So the best choice here was sequencing. You guys are rock stars. We are going to do this every Friday, so it's just going to become habit. You're going to become really good readers and really good test takers, and that's what we want to do, right? We want to be good test takers because, guys, I'm going to tell you what, I'm a bad test taker, and the only way we get better at taking tests is to practice. And I know we don't like tests, but they're a part of life, and they're what we have to deal with, and so why not get good at them, right? So I am so excited to see how you guys did. Thanks for watching our video, and I hope that you guys have a fantastic weekend.